A very good morning to you, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. I'm indeed very happy today that I'm able to share the Dhamma with you again this morning. Okay, before we begin with today's Dhamma sharing, let us put our palms together and pay our deepest, and highest respect to the Buddha, the Blessed One, whom through his great effort and sacrifice, he has rediscovered the path to liberation, and that has enabled us, to practice the true Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, very good morning to you again, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Okay, as you can see, the title of today's Dhamma sharing is actually entitled, Have You Come to Your Senses? Okay, so you actually may be a bit curious, as to what this Dhamma talk is actually all about, because the title is a bit enigmatic, right? It's just have you come to your senses? So, okay, before I start my sharing today, I just like to share my screen before I continue. Okay. Okay, I've actually selected this Dhamma sharing today. It is actually primarily motivated by this sutta, which I've actually selected. It is actually extracted from the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses, and this is actually sutta number 104, and it's actually entitled Et Samagama. And this sutta actually began, by actually recording, there was this occasion where the Blessed One was actually living in the Sakyan country at Samagama. This is a place called Samagama, and on that occasion, on that day, this Niganta Nakaputta, who was actually the religious teacher of the Jains. This Niganta Nakaputta, he actually just passed away at Pava. And what happened is, when upon his death, there was actually in a way like chaos, amongst his followers, and the Nigantas, they were actually divided, they were split into two, and upon the death of their master, their disciples actually had taken to quarreling and brawling, and they were in deep disputes, accusing others and stabbing each other, with words of verbal daggers. They actually accuse each other, by saying that they actually quarrel with each other. They actually accuse the other of saying, oh, what you understand from the master is wrong, and you do not understand the Dhamma as taught, by this Niganta, and your way is wrong, and my way is right. I am consistent, you are inconsistent. What you actually, had just said was actually wrongly understood by what the teacher said, and you have actually, in a way, turned the teaching inside out. If you can follow what the what this paragraph which I've highlighted here, and say go and learn better, or disentangle yourself if you can. And there was this huge quarrel that happened between the disciples of this Niganta, and even the lay disciples, the white cloth lay disciples, who were the Jains, they were actually quite disgusted and dismayed, and they were very disappointed, hugely disappointed with what happened with what the these disciples and pupils of this Niganta Nakaputta did, and and they were actually very disappointed, and they and most of them they actually they were actually quite disappointed, and they were actually quite dismayed and disgusted now. So what happened is when this happened, at the time, there was this novice, this Samanera, called Chunda, and he was actually spending the rains at Pava, So he was actually observing the rains at Pava, and then he actually went to see this Venerable Ananda, and after paying homage to him, he actually told Venerable Ananda what actually happened, that there was this huge dispute, that actually happened, upon the passing of Niganta Nataputta, and of course, this Venerable Ananda said, friend Chunda, this is news that should be told to Buddha, the Blessed One. Come, let us approach the Buddha and tell him. So, this Venerable Ananda and this Chunda, they actually went to see the Buddha, and after paying respect to the Buddha, then of course they actually inform, the Buddha, what happened, that when Niganta died, this their disciples and the followers, they were actually all very, very divided, they were all involved in quarreling and dispute, and so this Venerable Ananda told the Buddha, he said, upon this, he reflected, he told the Buddha, let no dispute arise in the Sangha when the Blessed One has gone, because when he actually reflected on what happened, when Niganta passed away, he actually had this worry, that when the Buddha is gone, would this actually happen to the Sangha, that disputes will arise in terms of what the Buddha actually taught, will the disciples actually be involved in quarrels, and accuse each other of understanding the Buddha's teaching wrongly, saying that, what I understand is right, what you understand is wrong, and he says, for such a dispute would be for the harm and unhappiness of the many, for the loss and suffering of gods and humans, So, so when the Buddha actually heard about this, then of course the Buddha actually, spoke to this Venerable Ananda about this 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma, which he has taught, in all the discourses, which the Buddha actually has delivered to his disciples. The Buddha actually has actually taught about this 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma, where nobody will actually dispute, and everybody agrees on this 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma, which is actually highlighted in this paragraph, in detail. You can refer to them, starting from the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the Satipatthana, up all the way to the Noble Eightfold Path. So these 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma are actually the very core teachings of the Buddha, which the Buddha has expounded, in detail, and everybody agrees, and there's actually no dispute about it, and of course, the Buddha says here that, of course, this Venerable Ananda actually agreed, that nobody, no two disciples of the Buddha will actually dispute about the 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma. And you just look at what the Buddha actually says here. A dispute about livelihood or about the patimokkha will be trifling, Ananda. That's what the Buddha actually tells Venerable Ananda. He says, the Buddha says, if there is a dispute about the livelihood or about the patimokkha, which is actually the monastic code of conduct for the monks, the patimokkha, will be actually trifling, the Ananda. Trifling means something that's actually very not important. Trifling means not important. But the Buddha says, should a dispute arise in the Sangha about the path or the way, to liberation, when there's actually a dispute that arises in the Sangha about the path or the spiritual path or way to attain liberation or Nibbana, such a dispute would be for the harm and happiness of many, for the loss, harm, and suffering of gods and humans. So when you actually look at this statement given by the Buddha, the Blessed One, in this MN 104, it does actually set you thinking and reflect, right, that essentially the Buddha, in his infinite wisdom, and also that in his in his super psychic power, the Buddha actually has already foreseen, even more than 2,500 years ago, the Buddha has actually foreseen that in the future there would actually arise disputes and quarrels, or even disagreements. I wouldn't say quarrels, but disagreements, as to the path, or the way that one should actually practice in order to attain, the various stages of enlightenment. For example, from stream entry, all the way, to Sakadagami, to Anagami, to Arahantship, right? So we have these 4 stages of enlightenment, So the question now is, what is the path that should actually that we should follow in order for us to achieve these various stages of enlightenment, So the Buddha, during that time, he had already foreseen that there would be disputes, and disagreements as to what this path, would be, that, one should actually practice in order for us to attain, various stages of enlightenment, and we are actually seeing that, unfolding before our very eyes, right? How powerful the Buddha is, right? That he's able to foresee, what will happen to us, in the future, even right now, if you actually see in our Buddhist community, we are actually seeing this situation unfolding before our very eyes, right? We now we see our Buddhist community being very fragmented. We have different schools, of Buddhism, and different schools, that actually teach different methods, that one should follow in order for us to attain, enlightenment, and also to attain nibbana ultimately, right? And all these schools, they actually teach different ways and different methods. It's as it's come to a stage where it's actually it's become very perplexing and also very confusing, especially for a newcomer to Buddhism, as to what should be practiced, I mean, of course, when it comes to the spiritual path, like for example, like I mentioned before, dana and sila, these are the 2 building blocks of the spiritual path, and it's fairly simple, as to how one should practice dana and also observe the 5, precepts, the 8 precepts, not to do the 10 unwholesome actions, So we know, how to guard our silas, and also how to do dana. But when it comes to bhavana, which is mental development, or what we call meditation, it becomes an area, where there is so many choices for us to choose, right? It's actually very much like, visiting a supermarket or even a departmental store, when you actually want to purchase something, and when you actually enter the store, you find that for a same item, that you intend to purchase, there's so many different brands, different brands, with different functions, different ingredients, different benefits, all claiming to be the best, and different prices as well, So the question is, how do you actually choose a method of meditation, that would actually be in accordance, with what the Buddha has actually thought, because nowadays, we don't actually have the benefit of seeing the Buddha, and we cannot actually actually ask, or request the Buddha to actually teach us, and the Buddha, he is a very skilled teacher, and he knows exactly where our temperaments are, or where our spiritual development stage is. And he actually is able to couch the Dhamma talk or Dhamma sharing in such a way that you're able to immediately just realize it, and suddenly something just clicks in you, and because of that, you become a stream enterer on the spot. We don't have that benefit anymore. So nowadays, we depend a lot on our teachers, and a lot of times, the teachers, a lot of times, as Buddhists, we are very compliant. What the teachers tell us, we just assume that is correct. Of course, that is the approach that is necessary for us to actually learn a teaching. We need to have this deference attitude, but at the same time, we must also be aware of what the Buddha actually has told us, in the suttas, that we must actually have an investigative mind, and we must actually find out exactly what we learn or what we hear from teachers is actually correct, So, for example, like nowadays, in the field of meditation, we have so many teachers that teach us. For example, some that actually, teach us, that to become a stream enterer, you don't even need to meditate. You just need to read the suttas and attend Dhamma talks, and something will just click in you and become a stream enterer. Okay, that is one teaching. And there are also teachers who teach, yes, meditation is necessary, but when you meditate, for example, nowadays it's actually very common. For example, we actually meditate by, for example, we look at our rising and falling of our abdomen, or as a primary object, or we may be actually be looking at the in breath and out breath, if you practice Anapanasati. Either one is fine, okay? But this is the primary object. But the question now is, some of the teachings actually teach that when you do this rising and falling or Anapanasati, you should just place your mindfulness on this primary object and do not pay attention, to whatever sense objects will come into your sixth sense doors, or rather what I call the sixth sense bases, or I call them sixth sense doors. Just don't pay attention to them. But whatever you hear, whatever you see, whatever you smell, whatever you taste, whatever that you come into contact with, or whatever you think, just disregard them. Don't pay attention to them. Always come back to your primary object. Rising and falling, or Anapanasati. Okay, that is actually one teaching. And there's also another teaching that says, for example, if you react. How your mind reacts to these six sense spaces. For example, when something impinges on your six sense doors, right? And then you find that lobha, dosa, moha arises in you. For example, you get very angry, or you get very greedy, or you get very lustful, and then the teaching says that you should actually just disregard them, Don't think about, don't care about all this thing, and come back to your sense to your primary object. And then you, after that, when you are calm, just observe this anger. For example, anger has arisen, anger has persisted, and anger has ceased. Just observe only. Don't have to do anything. Don't just pure mindfulness alone is good enough for you to actually see the impermanence of this kilesas that arise in you. That's actually one teaching that you should not actually contemplate. Don't investigate about this anger. Just look at the anger rising, persisting, and ceasing. Just look at, it comes and goes, just using mindfulness alone is good enough. And mindfulness is very important. Just look at rising and rising and ceasing, rising and ceasing, rising and ceasing. So the question now is, we have this teachings that actually teaches that six sense doors are not good, that they are actually very they actually call this that the six sense doors are actually the Mara's playground, or devil's playground, or Mara's playground, whatever you want to call them. But they actually say the six sense doors are not good. This is where all the kilesas, lobha, dosa, moha will arise in you. So don't think about, don't pay attention to them. Just come back to your primary object, or you just observe, rising and ceasing, rising and ceasing, come and go, come and go. That's why there are also some teachers who teach, for example, when you meditate, just focus on the tip of your nose, and just note breath in, breathing out, breathing. Just look at Anapanasati. If there's any anger that comes in you, just note, the anger has arisen, the anger, goes is there, and anger goes away. So it becomes in such a way that you just need to have mindfulness, and just to see impermanence, and that's good enough for you to attain, the different stages of enlightenment. So we have this background of this meditation teachings nowadays that actually in a way subscribe to the notion that six sense doors, are not to be observed. You do not investigate the six sense doors. They are the Mara's playground. If you observe the six sense doors, then you are actually not meditating. Then you are in a way, not being mindful. There's no samadhi. And you are not actually meditating the right way. You should just keep focusing on your primary object, and just note something has come and gone. Just see the anicca, the impermanence of it. So is this actually what the Buddha has actually taught in the suttas, So that's why this Sutta 104, actually, it keeps me thinking that, we are now in a situation where we have all these different ways of teaching that whether this is actually in accordance with what the Buddha has actually taught in the suttas. So that is the main objective, for me to share today's Dhamma, in terms of whether it is true. The Buddha actually says that these six sense doors are indeed the Mara's playground, and you should not actually investigate, how your mind reacts to these six sense doors, and you should not even place your sati on the six sense doors, instead just focus on the primary object. Do not open your mindfulness, do not actually have this open mindfulness on these six sense doors, because once you allow your mind to actually slip into this six sense doors, then you are actually straying off from Dhamma, and you're allowing all these kilesas to arise in you, and you become, you actually have fallen trap to Mara, Is this actually what the Buddha says with regard to the six sense doors? That's why the title of my talk today is "Have you come to your senses?" Yes, it's actually to investigate. Is it really true? The six sense doors are not to be investigated, observed, as in accordance with what the Buddha has actually taught in the suttas. And if we see from the suttas, right, actually the reason why a lot of teachers actually say the six sense doors, are not to be observed, and one should just withdraw yourself to the primary object, and don't investigate the six sense, what happens to the six sense doors, and just withdraw to your primary object. I believe is actually motivated by this sutta SN 35.199. It's about this sutta, about this tortoise. It's called Kuma Sutta, the tortoise. This tortoise, this sutta itself, right? It actually records this discourse, this Dhamma discourse given by the Buddha to the monks, and the Buddha actually gave a simile, and he actually told the monks this simile, that there was one time along the shore of a lake, there was this hard-shelled tortoise. This tortoise, it was a hard-shelled tortoise, and it was foraging for food in the evening. And not far away, there was actually a jackal who was also foraging for food, So when this tortoise saw the jackal from afar, right, looking for food, so fearing for its life, because knowing that this jackal was going to eat up this tortoise, right, this tortoise was actually very clever, he actually withdrew his four limbs together with the neck, into the shell, So it remains perfectly quiet and still, So um, so when this tortoise actually withdraws the four limbs and the head into the shell, this jackal, right, he actually thinks, as soon as this tortoise, stretches out, one or another of his four limbs or the neck, right, I will just seize it right there, tear off this tortoise and eat the meat, and but of course, this tortoise was just too clever, right? This tortoise actually didn't stretch out any of the four limbs, and the neck, So this jackal, right, after having waited for a long time, he lost interest and left the tortoise, So that's why, you see, this here the Buddha says the Mara is continually and ceaselessly hovering around you, So this the Buddha says that this jackal is just like Mara, and he says that perhaps I'll get an opportunity by means of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, I'll get the opportunity, uh, uh, I'll get an opportunity by means of the intellect, So which means this Mara is always finding an opportunity to invade you through the six sense doors, through your eye, your ear, your nose, the tongue, body, and the mind. So this is actually where the Mara will actually attack and invade, So monks, you should dwell with the doors to your senses well guarded. So the Buddha says, on seeing the form with the eye, do not grasp, the signs and features of this form, Because if you do not actually exercise restraint over your eye, these evil, unskillful qualities such as loba, dosa, moha will assail you, will attack you. Same thing with hearing a sound, smelling an aroma, a smell, tasting a flavor, or touching a tactile sensation, or thinking, with the intellect. So the Buddha actually says that these six sense doors are actually where Mara will actually invade you, But the Buddha is not saying in this sutta that you should not actually, should not actually place your mindfulness in the six sense doors and also, investigate and contemplate, whenever loba, dosa, moha arise in six sense doors, the Buddha never says that you should just withdraw and from the six sense doors and just don't bother about them, and don't hear, don't see, don't listen to, don't hear, and close off your six sense doors. The Buddha never says that. The Buddha says that upon seeing an object with the eye, you see, upon seeing the form with the eye, you see, so you must actually exercise restraint. So this sutta is actually about exercising restraint, over your six sense doors, by actually, of course, applying, samatha vipassana, right? And using wisdom, as the tool for you to, guard your six sense doors, But the Buddha is not asking you to actually, come back to your sense doors and do not actually, do not actually place your sati in the six sense doors. Investigate, how you react to the six sense, to the sense objects in the six sense doors. So perhaps this sutta could actually have been in a way misunderstood, that because the tortoise actually withdraws the four limbs and the head into the shell. Therefore, as meditator, we should also withdraw our sati back to our anapanasati, or whether our rising, falling, and don't bother about what happens at the six sense doors. So actually, there is a big, definitely this is definitely not what the sutta is actually saying. This sutta is actually for us to exercise restraint, by actually using wisdom, as the tool for us to guard our sense doors, our mindfulness and our wisdom to actually guard our sense doors. But actually, it's not about withdrawing, and just coming back to our primary object and disregarding the six sense doors. So another one, of course, is actually about this sutta from the Udana 1.10. Is actually about Bahia Sutta. This Bahia, he was actually the bark cloth wearer. He made his robe from the bark, and it's a very interesting sutta here, because this Bahia was actually, he thought that he was an arahant, but actually he wasn't, so there was this deva, who was actually affiliated with him, probably due to past associations. This deva was actually a devata, was actually very sympathetic to this Bahia, and he actually told him, "You're not an arahant. If you want to be an arahant, you should actually look for the Buddha, the Blessed One, who has arisen in the world, and he's now living in Savatthi, And so this Bahia set off, immediately to look for the Buddha, because he was actually heard about all these what he was actually very stirred and very moved by what inspired by what this Devata actually told him, that there was this Buddha, fully enlightened, who has actually arisen, in Savatthi, and of course, this when he actually started the journey, and when he actually met the Buddha in Savatthi, the Buddha was actually an arms round, and the Buddha, this Sutta then went on to say, how he actually besieged the Buddha 3 times, and then the Buddha, the Buddha, of course, at the third request, the Buddha actually relented, and the Buddha actually told Bahia, a very, very short stanza, in the Dhamma talk, and the Buddha says, Bahia, you should train yourself. In the seen will be merely what is seen. In the heard will be merely what is heard. In the sense will be merely what is sensed. In the cognized will be merely what is cognized. So the Buddha is actually saying that, when you see something, just let it, when whatever that's seen will just be what is seen. When you hear, that it will be merely just what is heard. So. And of course, when Bahia actually heard this stanza, he became actually an arahant. All the taints actually, were uprooted, and he became an arahant. Just by this short stanza, it is seen merely what is seen. So, when someone actually reads this sutta, they may actually form the conclusion that, when you meditate, you should just, for example, just when you see something, just know seeing. When you actually smell something, whether it's sweet smelling or foul smelling, just know smelling. Or when you actually hear something, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, just know hearing. Don't react to it. Don't react to it. Just keep a very calm mind and don't bother, and come back to your primary object. And that is meditation. Don't just whatever that happens to you at the sixth sense basis, just know seeing, smelling. hearing, touching, thinking. Don't bother about whether there's any anger or whatever. Even if anger has risen or displeasure, always come back to your primary object, and that itself is actually meditation. And this is in accordance with this Udana 1.10 that the Buddha tells Bahia in the scene. What is merely it is in the scene will be merely what is seen. In the hurt will be merely what is heard. So it is actually in line with what the Buddha taught Bahia, right? So actually, if you just read this paragraph alone, you may form this conclusion, but actually it's not. If you read the other suttas, right? Because when you read the sutta, you must read everything holistically, as a whole. You cannot just form conclusions by just look at one sutta itself. So if you look at the other suttas, actually the Buddha tells us that there's more to it. It's not just about seeing and just come back to your sense door. It's actually, this is not what the Buddha actually has taught. So if you actually see this Samyutta Nikaya 35.13, right? You see here, excuse me. If you actually see what is stated here, he says, as Savatthi, right, the Buddha actually told the monks, before my enlightenment, before he became a Sammasambuddha, while I was still a bodhisattva, not yet fully enlightened, he actually occurred to me, what is this gratification? What is the danger? What is the escape in the case of the I? The Buddha actually asked himself, while he was actually before he attained enlightenment, that when he was actually seated under the Bodhi tree, when he was actually contemplating, so he was actually asking himself, what is the gratification, and what is this satisfaction? Gratification means satisfaction, and what is the danger, what is the danger? The danger, and what is the escape, in the case of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So, and the Buddha says, when he contemplated this, he knows the answer came to him, the pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on this eye, this is the gratification of the eye, and what's the danger to the eye? The danger to the eye is actually because it's actually impermanent, suffering, and also non-self, This is the danger of the eye. So the removal and abandonment and desire and lust for the eye, this escape from the eye, So actually the Buddha, he actually realized, he actually contemplated, you see, the sixth sense basis, when he was actually under the, when he was contemplating to become, to attain Buddhahood, under the Bodhi tree, he was actually contemplating what? Contemplating the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. And he actually was actually contemplating in terms of what is the satisfaction, and what is the danger, and what is actually the escape. Okay, when you actually look at the six sense doors, you must ask yourself, what is the satisfaction? Oh, the satisfaction of the eye is actually when I have pleasure and joy. When I see something that is so nice, for example, I see a plate of really delicious food, and I see something that for example, for example, a very something that you like, perhaps it can be a plate of food, or you see something, a beautiful person, a very pretty or handsome person, or perhaps you see something that's really very enjoyable, and because of that, the pleasure and joy that arises in you, that is the gratification, But what is the danger? The Buddha that says the danger is because of what? The danger is because, whatever that you see with the eye itself, it is actually, anicca, dukkha, anatta. It's actually non-self, And of course, and how do you escape from this? The escape from this is actually when you actually abandon this craving, right? This this desire and lust, for the eye, and the eye itself, because the eye actually sees, the form, So this lust arises because of this eye in contact with the form, right? And because of that, there's consciousness and there's contact, and because of contact, there's actually feelings, perceptions, and volitions. When nice feelings happen, and volitions, and feelings, perceptions, and pleasant feelings, perceptions, and volitions. You actually crave for it. The volition arises, you crave for it. So the Buddha actually contemplated, to become the Sammasambuddha, to be fully enlightened. You see, the Buddha actually contemplated what? The sixth sense basis, See the last paragraph, the Buddha says, so long, bhikkhu, as I did not directly know as they really are the gratification, the danger and escape, in case of these 6 internal sense bases, I did not claim to have awakened to the surpassed perfect enlightenment. You see how important these 6 internal sense bases are? Is actually the very basis of the Buddha's attainment of Buddhahood. He actually contemplated the 6 internal sense bases. You see, did the Buddha say that I just became a Buddha because I did anapanasati or I did rising and falling, of the abdomen? No, but he actually became a Buddha through what? Through open mindfulness, by actually placing the mindfulness on a 6 internal sense basis, okay. And you see the next sutta itself, this 35.14 is not just the 6 internal sense bases. 6 internal sense bases, of course, refer to our eye base, our nose base, ear base, tongue base, our body base and our mind base. And a Buddha in this 35.142, the Buddha says that he actually attained enlightenment because of what? He actually also understands the satisfaction, the drawback, and the escape with regard to what? The six external sense bases, right? The 6 external sense bases are what? The sight, sound, smells, taste, touch, and thoughts. So the Buddha actually says that when he was actually contemplating to become a Buddha, he was actually contemplating the 6 sense internal bases and the 6 external sense bases. So can you imagine how important these 6 internal and external sense bases are? Because he understands the gratification, the danger and escape of these 6 sense bases. And you see in 35.17, the Buddha says, if there was no gratification in the eye, beings will not become enamored. Enamored means, we become very attracted and become very beings cling to it, and because there's gratification in the eye, beings become, attached to it, and if there's no danger in the eye, beings, will actually not experience revulsion towards it, and if there's no danger in the eye, the beings will not actually experience revulsion towards it. And if there's no escape from the eye, and there will be no escape from it, So the Buddha actually, you see, the Buddha here actually highlights that this 6 internal sense bases and the 6 external sense bases, you must actually understand completely the gratification, the danger, and the escape with regard to these 6 sense bases. So you must always actually contemplate, this 6 sense bases, by actually by placing your sati in the 6 sense bases at all times. Like what the Buddha actually did. You see, the Buddha actually said in this Samyutta Nikaya that when he was actually contemplating to become Buddha under the Bodhi tree, right, he was contemplating in terms of this, whatever that happens at the 6 sense basis in terms of internal and external sense basis, whatever sense object that actually comes to contact with the eye, the nose, the ear, the tongue, the body, and the mind, the Buddha actually contemplates this, whatever pleasure, the joy that arises in me, that actually arises in dependence on the sense object. That's why, when the eye comes in contact with the this sense object, there's actually, eye consciousness, and where there's eye consciousness, coming in contact with the eye base as well as the object, the form, then there's contact, and when there's contact, that's where you have these feelings, perceptions, and volitions that arise. These pleasant feelings arise. So the Buddha understands that this feeling, this pleasure, and joy that arise, it's actually independent, on this sense object, coming in contact with the eye. That's why it is actually non-self. There's actually nothing permanent about it, so it's actually empty. The Buddha actually says it's sunyata. It's actually empty. There's actually nothing substantive about this pleasure and joy. And so it's actually something that's actually very transient. And if you actually if you crave for this pleasure and joy, that's where you are trapped, in this samsara, and there's actually no escape. In this unending samsara. Because why? Because you actually have this vipallasa, this wrong perception, that this joy and pleasure that arise is because there's something permanent about it. Now you feel that this joy and pleasure is actually me mine and myself, and you have this wrong perception that there is a self to it. That's why you do not penetrate into the Dhamma, and you do not see the Four Noble Truths. You do not penetrate into the Four Noble Truths because you do not actually contemplate in terms of this six internal sense bases, and also the external sense bases, how they interact, and how you can actually realize anicca, dukkha, anatta by actually investigating what happens at the six sense doors. So you can see here, these six sense doors are the very basis of the Buddha attain, the Samma Sambuddha, to become a Buddhahood, to attain Buddhahood. He actually contemplated these six sense doors, just by looking at the six sense doors, and knowing the gratification, the danger and escape, and that itself, actually, will lead one to actually attain the different stages of enlightenment. So we can see from here, that we must actually be careful, when we actually listen to different teachings about meditation, in terms of how, one should actually meditate. But if you actually look at what the suttas actually prescribe, in terms of, what the Buddha has actually taught in the suttas, right? You find that this six sense basis, as well as the the six sense basis and the six sense objects actually played a very integral part, of the the teachings of the Buddha. It's actually something very integral. You see, and here the Buddha, there's another sutta in this 35.23. This the Buddha actually tells the monks, it says, bhikkhus, I teach you the all. The Buddha says the all, means everything. And what bhikkhus is the all? The Buddha says, what is this the all? And all means everything that you need to know. What everything that you need to know in order to attain enlightenment. The Buddha says, what is this all? This all refers to what? The eye and the form, the ear and the sound, the nose and the odors, the tongue and the taste, the body and the tactile objects, the mind and the mental phenomena. That is called the all. See, the Buddha actually says, if you can contemplate the six sense bases, the six sense doors, and also the six sense objects, you already have all the necessary tools in order for you to attain enlightenment. So you see, so the Buddha says, if anybody rejects this, what I say, that there's another explanation for all, that will be mere empty boast on his part. So you see here, everything is actually about the six sense bases and the six sense doors and six sense objects. And of course, in this SN 35.24, the Buddha actually further talks about, further elaborates, these six sense doors and six sense bases, how they actually interact, for us to actually, how, see how, to see the non-self, this anatta, is actually very important for us to see non-self. So the Buddha says, if you want to abandon, all these kilesas, what you should do is that you should actually contemplate the I, okay? And then in terms of the form, the object, the sense object, and also the consciousness, I consciousness. And when these three come together, means the I, the form, and the consciousness, there's eye contact, And when there's eye contact, there's actually feeling arises, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, pleasant, painful, or whether it's neither pleasant or painful, So all these are to be abandoned, the Buddha says. So the Buddha says, once you see all these, how they interact with each other through causes and conditions, then you see that actually there's actually nothing, substantive to it. There's nothing really permanent about, what you experience in terms of all the nice feelings, the pleasure and joy, the craving, then you find that actually all these are actually empty. All this arises through causes and conditions. There's actually nothing permanent about it. And because of that, you actually develop dispassion, and also you develop disenchantment. That's how you're able to eradicate the different stages, the different factors and different kilesas, different all these kilesas, and also all these defilements that arise. That's how you're able to let go, because you can only let go through wisdom, and you're able to develop this wisdom only when you're able to see how these six sense bases and the six sense doors interact through causes and conditions that actually result in this pleasure, joy, whether it's anger, lobha, dosa, moha, all these and all the delusion, all the ignorance, all these arise because of what? Because of all we fail to actually recognize that all these are actually non-self. We actually have this wrong wrong view that we have been tricked that there is just something permanent about it, about this six sense bases and six sense doors, and also our the feelings that arise. We actually trick, and because of that, we get trapped, in samsara. But once you're able to penetrate to the Dhamma and able to see all these actually come into play through causes and conditions through the six sense bases, then you find that you're able to overcome these factors, and that's how you become a stream enterer. Then because there's the because to become a stream enterer, you actually have to eradicate, the three lower factors, right? And the one, of course, the first one is actually identity view, right? Because by having this identity view, you actually have this wrong perception that there's actually something that's permanent, in you, in everything, that you perceive, through your five sense bases, six sense doors, and so you actually have this wrong view that the five aggregates themselves actually are permanent, So because of that, you have this wrong perception, That's why the Buddha says, in order for you to abandon all these kilesas, first thing you must actually you must place your mindfulness in the six sense basis, and also observe how your mind reacts to this six sense to the six sense objects that come into contact, with your six sense base, six sense doors, and just be aware, how your mind reacts to these six sense objects, whether there's actually lobha, dosa, moha that arise in you. And then from there, you actually contemplate, that actually all these are actually empty. So, so that's why, from all these suttas, we can actually see how important this six sense basis, and the six sense objects are, right? You must be able to place your mindfulness at all times, not just when you are actually, like taking a block leave to actually go on a retreat, and only you sit cross-legged, close your eyes, when you do rising, falling, anapanasati, then only then you observe the six sense basis. The Buddha says, even in your daily life, when you're actually doing activities, you can always be aware, what actually comes into contact with your six sense doors, and then check your mind, read your mind, whether any lobha, dosa, moha that arises in you. And from there, you actually contemplate, the how this defilements that arise in you are actually anicca, dukkha, anatta. So you're using these kilesas actually like the fertilizers, they actually they act like fertilizers for you, for your tree of wisdom, you're actually using the kilesas to your benefit. Instead of fighting with them, you actually use them as fertilizers, and to help you to actually contemplate actually how all things arise through causes and conditions. And you can only know that if you actually open up your awareness, and be mindful of what happens, at the six sense basis, or how your mind reacts to the six sense objects that come into contact with your six sense basis. That's the only way, that's where the battleground is, It's not by just closing off your six sense doors and coming back to your rising, falling, and your anapanasati. That is not meditation. That is, in fact, maybe just samatha meditation. You are calming yourself, but you are not actually contemplating anicca, dukkha, anatta. You are not able to actually realize non-self, So, and of course, we know that to become even a sotapanna, right? If you can see from this SN 22.122, to become a sotapanna, this Venerable Sariputta actually tells this Venerable Mahakotita, that you must contemplate the five aggregates, means your body, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. So these are the five aggregates that actually make up, that actually, which are actually our five aggregates. So these five aggregates, this Venerable Sariputta said, you must actually always contemplate in terms of non-self. It's empty. It's like a disease. It's like a arrow, a painful, a cancer. and it's something that's very unstable, subject to change. Nothing substantive about it now. And you see from here, you can see from this sutta, to become from a stream enterer to become a Sakadagami, you must do the same thing, contemplate the five aggregates again in terms of non-self, in terms of anatta. You see, all the way from Sakadagami to Anagami to all the way to Arahant, this Venerable Sariputta said, you must do the same thing, keep contemplating the five aggregates. With these five aggregates which I just mentioned, which are very important. And of course, if you want to also know about this sutta, there's another interesting sutta from AN 4.45 called Rohitasa. This Rohitasa, is actually he's actually a Dewa. This is you see here one day, this Dewa, by the name of Rohitasa, and one night, right, he actually flew and came to see the Buddha in Jeta's Grove, in this Anathapindika's monastery, and in the far extreme of the night, he actually came to see the Buddha, lighting up the whole Jeta's Grove. And he actually told the Buddha that when he was still a human being, he was actually something like an ascetic, like a renunciant, ascetic. And he actually has got marvelous, remarkable psychic powers. That he was able to fly at very fast speed, faster than, an archer, shooting an arrow, and he was able to also walk, a powerful skywalker means he walked a very far distances, his legs, one step itself was actually very, very huge, so he was actually he has got huge psychic powers, and he actually flew because of this psychic powers. He decided this Rohitasa, when he was still a human being, this ascetic, he actually decided to fly to the far corner of the universe. He kept on flying. He only stopped by just to eat, and drink, and defecate, and ease himself. But other than that, he went on flying, just to actually look for this place in the universe where nobody grows old, nobody is born, nobody age, nobody dies, and nobody passes away. He actually is asking, is there a place in the universe when none of us will actually have to grow old and die, and we live forever. Is there such a place where we can just stay there forever, we don't die, and we are not subject to this anicca dukkha anatta, we are always there forever, forever happy. Is there such a place? The Buddha says, I tell you, friend, that it's not possible. By traveling, or as far as you can travel in the universe, you can never find a place. Such a place does not exist. And of course, this Rohitasa Deva was very impressed. He says, "Oh, it's amazing, Lord, how you're able to answer this so well, because I actually experienced it myself. Because this Rohitasa, before he could even reach that place in the universe, he actually died. Because he couldn't find that place. Even though he has such great psychic power, he flew all the way in the universe to find that place. He couldn't find it. And he died along the way. And now he became a Dewa. So he said, yeah, I experienced it myself, because I actually, flew all the way there just to find that place where nobody grows old and die, and we live there forever. So he says, I never found such a place as well. So the Buddha says, you see this part which I highlighted here. Yet it is just within this fathom-long body, with its perception and intellect, that I declare there is the cosmos, the origination, the cessation, and the path leading to the cessation of cosmos. He says, Nibbana, Buddha says, Nibbana is actually found within this fathom-long, this 6-foot long body, is actually where Nibbana lies. So the Buddha is actually saying, to attain Nibbana, you just need to contemplate the 5 aggregates. So now the question here is, how do we contemplate the 5 aggregates through the 6 sense bases? That is the next question, we need to answer. So to answer that, I will actually touch on this, in my next talk. In my next Dhamma talk, I will actually be further discussing with you how we can actually contemplate the 5 aggregates, subject to clinging through the 6 sense doors. So I will continue, with this section in my next Dhamma talk, because of time constraint. So in the next session, in part 2, I will then, in my next Dhamma sharing session, I will then discuss how we can actually contemplate these 5 aggregates through the 6 sense doors, and 6 sense bases. Because as you know, contemplating 5 aggregates is the very basic is a spiritual pathway of us becoming a stream enterer all the way to become an arahant, you know. And this is confirmed by what the Buddha tells his Devata called Rohitasa, that to attain Nibbana, you don't have to actually look for anywhere. Just look within your body, which is your 5, you know, aggregates. You know, so you know, even this Rohitasa, you know, he actually tried to, when he was a renunciant, you know, he was actually a renunciant with psychic power. He tried to fly as far as, you know, incalculable distance all the way to the far corners of the universe, just to find this place where nobody grows old and dies. The Buddha says it's impossible. You know, there's no such place. You know, the only place where you can find Nibbana is within your body. This 6-foot long body, 1 fathom long body, where you can contemplate your 5 aggregates. That's where Nibbana is. You know, so you don't even have to look for anywhere. You know, just look at your 5 aggregates. And so now we have these 2 things. The 6 sense bases are very important. You know, the 6 internal and external 6 sense bases, and also the 5 aggregates. So how do we actually integrate these 6 internal external sense bases as well as our 5 aggregates? How do we integrate that, you know, for us to practice in order to attain liberation and the different stages of enlightenment? So I'll be addressing this in my next Dhamma talk. Okay, so for the meantime, you know, I'll now end my Dhamma sharing session today with regard to the 6 sense doors as well as 6 sense objects. And in the next session, you know, I'll then proceed to discuss about how you integrate the 5 aggregates into the 6 sense bases. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Loo, for today's nice sharing. Indeed, we have to contemplate and remember to watch our senses daily, not only when we are on the retreat. Just a gentle reminder, this is a Vesak celebration season. This year we will kick off in Penang on the 30th of April at Malaysia Buddhist Association, 182 Burma Road. Then on the 6th, the celebration in the Grand Way will be held at Bodhi Park and Samadhi Vihara in Shah Alam. This one is Selangor state level Vesak celebration. There'll be a list of activities. For details, please go to TBCM Facebook. Now let's dedicate marriage to all beings, whether they are seeing or unseen. Akasata Jabummata Deva Naga Mahitika Punyang Tam Anumojitwa Chiram Rakantu Loka Sasanang Etta Wata Cha Amhehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Deva Sabbe Bhuta Sabbe Satta Anumodantu Sabba Sampatti Siddhiya. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. And aspirations. Imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani bana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching. For other videos, please visit the links below. Bye-bye for now.